Professor K K Aziz, Pakistan's leading historian and the author of numerous books on the history of Pakistan and Muslim India, served on the academic staff of the Government College Lahore and the universities of the Punjab, London, Khartoum and Heidelberg. He also lectured on history, politics and Islam at the universities of Karachi, Peshawar, Dhaka, Islamabad, Hull, Durham, Geneva, Bergen, Oxford and Cambridge. In this presentation, Professor K K Aziz, in his characteristic candid style, speaks on a wide range of topics: the murder of history and the subsequent brainwashing through textbooks, an education system devoid of any strategic direction, the classical Muslim legacy of scholarship, the profundity of Allama Iqbal's genius, the troubled modern times, literature and culture. Professor Aziz has definitive and scholarly opinions on all.
I look at Moorish Spain. At Cordoba and Granada, we established two universities. The Cordoba University was established in about 9th century. French, Germans, British, Italians came to Cordoba to study there and read their translations of Greek philosophy and theology translated into Arabic, of which they were ignorant. So many Western historians say that what the Western Christians learned at Cordoba was, later on in the fullness of time, responsible for the Renaissance in Europe. We are proud of our Islamic heritage. We are proud that we taught the West a lot of things, and not few but many Western historians and authors accept it. But starting from the Arab conquest of Sindh, coming down to the end of the Mughal Empire in India, this makes about 1,000 years. We had great kings and queens with high personal culture. I want to emphasize and underline the word personal. With great personal cultural achievements. Babur was a diarist, not a biographer. Jahangir had a sense of art. Shah Jahan built the Taj Mahal, and so on. But where the Indian Muslim rulers totally failed compared to the Safavis, the Spaniards, the Ottomans, the Abbasids, was that the Mughals built palaces, gardens, mausoleums, no universities or colleges. All the colleges of Oxford and Cambridge were existing at the time of the Khiljis and Tughlaqs. So you can't say that there were no examples in the West. Our own past in Baghdad and Cordoba proves the same thing. It was not something new which had come to us, but the Mughals completely disregarded the educational needs and requirements of the Indian Muslims. Hence, in my opinion, the fall of the Mughal Empire, hence the anarchy and total lawlessness which succeeded it. And therefore, when Pakistan came into existence, our rulers had no educational tradition with which they were familiar and which they could reproduce in Pakistan. This is the historical reason for the failure of our educational system. Now, after 1857, Muslims were being oppressed both by the British and the Hindus. our state of economics, our state in education, our state of social living, our state of emancipation was pitiable. So Sayyid Ahmad Khan appears as a hero to save the Indian Muslim community and to raise it as high as possible. He does a number of things. He presents a new interpretation of Islam, which was so new that many people called him a kafir. But where Sayyid Ahmad Khan stumbled was in imagining the kind of education which the Indian Muslims needed. What Sayyid Ahmad did was to establish an MAO school and 2 years later an MAO college to produce Muslim graduates so that Muslim graduates could fill vacancies in government offices. You read all these speeches which Sayyid Ahmad Khan and his colleagues like Chirag Ali and Waqar ul-Mulk and Mohsin ul-Mulk made in the All India Mohammedan Educational Conference. You will find them talking about advancement of education, going to schools. Nobody talks about the importance of knowledge in your life. In other words, knowledge and education were divorced. You were asked to educate your children to compete with the Hindus, to get a piece of paper, a degree, and go to an office and become a clerk. So I have compiled full data about the number of graduates from MAO College going to Cambridge and graduates Muslim from Bombay, Calcutta and Madras Christian colleges and Government College Lahore going to Cambridge, compared the two results and found that the MAO College graduates performed very badly. The trouble begins with what I have invented a word, the Mughal syndrome. Every Pakistani after 1947 thinks that he descends directly from the Mughals. He should live like a Mughal prince. He should have everything at his command. Every Pakistani thinks that he has a right to live aristocratically because his ancestors did the same. I know our educational system is in shambles. Everybody talks about education, everybody talks about bringing about changes in it. Nobody does anything about it because, as I said earlier, nobody can get out of the brainwashed system of which he is himself a product. With this kind of education, if you go to Oxford or Cambridge, you can't really profit from what you learn there, because your capacity to understand, your capacity to ask questions has been killed by our education system. Hence the bad performance of the foreign educated bureaucrats and politicians. It has brainwashed all Pakistanis, irrespective of their social status or education. You see, don't forget one thing. A man in his 60s today is as much the product of these textbooks than a young man of 20 or 22. Because once the whole educational system is controlled by the establishment, When the boy joins the school at the age of 7 or 8 and leaves his college at the age of 21, 22, 23, 16 years brainwashing of him through these textbooks is enough to damage him for all life. He may be a very intelligent person, but he has accepted what the textbook says. Now, if I am not, I hope it's not irrelevant, but let me put it like this. Why should a Pakistani allow himself to be brainwashed like this? The answer is our educational system. And we are betraying our own past by doing this. The classical Islamic educational system, which produced Ibn Rushd and Sina and Ibn Arabi, was a system where knowledge was gained, importance of knowledge was emphasized, questions were asked. In fact, students were made to ask questions because wisdom begins by asking questions. In the educational system adopted by Pakistan in 1947, we reversed our own ancient classical legacy. We completely rejected it, and in its place we put what we call modern Western education, but in fact it is the opposite of Western education. Modern Western education is the same as the classical Islamic education. To prepare the boy's mind by making him ask questions. You should not accept what the book says or what the teacher says with your eyes shut. You should question the book, question the teacher, ask questions, and find your own answers. That is the way to wisdom. We have unfortunately abandoned this system. Hence, the successful brainwashing of an entire generation by prescribing officially sponsored, officially written, and officially prescribed textbooks, and is doing a great damage to the nation. That does not give you a license to distort your own history. You see, actually we should learn a lesson that in spite of distorting history at a very large scale in attacking Iraq, the Americans have been perhaps more guilty than we are in distortion. But you see, they are paying a price, and they'll probably pay a higher price within the next 10 years. I would put it like this, that every nation or every state has its own bias in history, there's no doubt about it. The way an Englishman looks at the origin of the Second World War is different from the way the German looks at it, obviously. By brainwashing, I did not mean total objectivity. Total objectivity is impossible. What I meant was accepting manufactured history. Well, I'm afraid I am not very hopeful about it. It may happen, but it will take 50 years or 100 years for the beginning of a peaceful living together of the Christian West and the Islamic East, if you put it like this. The reason is partly historical. From the time of the Crusades, Muslims and Christians have not really coexisted. In Iqbal's poetry, I found a connection between the two. I went into a trance when I read Javednama. I know Iqbal has written many ghazals in Persian. I know that there is some quality in that, but somehow when I come to Javednama, I find a different Iqbal, an Iqbal which is better than Iqbal. Let me put it like this. And I am swept away by the thought in Javednama, although I am not a philosophy student, nor I am an Islamist. I can't understand some of the things in Javednama. For example, when Iqbal discusses the meaning of the word abdahu, it is a little beyond me. But on the whole, if we want to understand the real greatness of Iqbal, both in spheres of thought and in his command of the language, I think Javednama is the proper place to go to. See, what happened was that my father arrived in London in 1904, rented a house, 69 Shepherd's Bush Road in Hammersmith. The following year, in September 1905, Iqbal arrived also to be called to the bar and joined the same inn as my father's and Sheikh Abdul Qadir's. On weekends or late in the evenings, friends got around and came to see any of these people. There was usually a gathering of about a dozen people in the sitting room, talking, gossiping, relating jokes, telling stories, asking questions, talking about their studies and so on. And occasionally it happened that when all these people were laughing and talking and smiling, and Iqbal was listening to them, without any notice, Iqbal would just lean a little back in his chair, close his eyes, and be lost to the world. Most of the time, these other students did not even notice that Iqbal had fallen silent. They thought he just didn't want to say anything. And then after about 15 minutes, 10 minutes or 20 minutes, Iqbal would open his eyes, straighten his back and say, "Well, I was composing poetry. And do you want to listen to the share which have descended upon me in the last 15 minutes?" And the boys, of course, said, "Oh, of course, we want to hear you." And he would recite the poems. Now, I don't know what I would call this temporary disappearance of Iqbal from the present company. A sort of an inspiration, a sort of a transformation into another world in which he was alone. And the existence of so many people talking simultaneously in the room and making noise was completely beyond him. He had completely put them behind and concentrated on what he was doing. Still later, when I grew up, I found that my father was more impressed by Iqbal's Persian poetry than by his Urdu poetry, a prejudice which I have inherited from my father. I also think that Iqbal is a very great Persian poet, probably one of the greatest in the world. But as far as Urdu poetry is concerned, barring 3 or 4 major poems, there is nothing of great value in Urdu poetry. But I must emphasize that these 2 or 3 poems to which I refer are not only good, but they are, in my opinion, the greatest poems written in the Urdu language. Zauq-o-Shauq, Masjid-e-Qurtaba. There's nothing in Urdu literature which even comes miles near these two poems. I would like to summarize what I think about Iqbal in a few sentences. Iqbal is a great poet, the greatest in Urdu literature and Muslim India, greater than Ghalib in the sweep of his imagination and the quality of his vision. He shakes us by making us share the tumult of his mind. He shows us that half-hidden peaks of the future destiny of mankind through the play of what wisdom which poetry shares with prophecy. He sings of the rise and fall and another rise of Islam with a lyricism which touches our heartstrings. His hopes become our expectations. His despair becomes our dismay. His music is the music of another world, a world in which Plato heard the spheres sing and saw divinity making itself manifest. His poetry is one of the greatest that has been given to mankind to enjoy. To deny this is to deny that the sun rises at dawn. He is a philosopher of the first rank, an Islamic thinker of the quality and worth of Ghazali, a maker of some revolutionary ideas about the interpretation of the Quran, which the greatest living theologians are still in the process of understanding and digesting. When about 40 years ago, I started reading the Quran very carefully, collecting all the English and Urdu translations, reading them again and again, trying to understand them, and having lived in Khartoum for a long time, I had a bit of Arabic. And then collating Iqbal's Persian work and the Quran, I found a connection between the two. I will not say that Iqbal's Persian poetry is a commentary on the Quran. That would be a large claim. But I would certainly insist that I, as a Muslim, came to understand the meaning of the Quran as much as I could, better, after reading Iqbal. See, because Persian is still a foreign tongue to us. It is not my mother tongue. And Iqbal was not writing in Punjabi, nor is the Quran written in Punjabi. My Persian is fairly good, but still it is not as good as an Iranian's. What I mean is that I hope it is not kufr. Reading the Quran in Arabic does not touch my heart because my Arabic is not good enough. But reading the same thing in a sort of a commentary or inspiration or conclusion in Iqbal's Persian makes my understanding deeper. I hope I made myself clear. In this respect, I will say that I have come not to be a better Muslim, but I have come to understand my faith a little better in terms of reason, not in terms of faith. My faith is weak or strong, that's my own business, not yours. But even from a rational point of view, if you want to understand what God is saying in the Quran and what is the meaning underlying what He says, I would rather go to Iqbal than to Thanvi Saab or Deputy Nazir Ahmad or anybody else who has translated and commented on the Quran. I think this is the highest compliment I can pay to Iqbal. Without Iqbal, I would not have come to have a genuine understanding of what God is trying to tell us.